you are having a good evening. We are missing the bumper music, and so we're not certain about breaks and in between, but we will do what we can to keep the show hopefully in sync with everything that's been set up here on TFR. We appreciate all of you joining us. Honored again to be here with my good friend and co-host Rob Skiba for a continuation of the Genesis Revisited series. Rob, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good as well. I'm glad um, to be finally rid of that kidney stone. Everybody,
Ooh.
Anybody that's ever had one knows how discomforting those are. But did want to ask you about any updates on any film festivals or any word on the ones that Chicago and Seattle that had just gone down the last time we talked.
Yeah, um, we did really well in Seattle. We got nominated. We didn't win, but we took 4 nominations. We got Best Short
Sweet.
Film Under 15 Minutes, nominated for Best Director, Short Film, Best Soundtrack, and Best Animated Short. So considering it was a secular international festival with a lot of competition, there were a ton of other videos that were submitted for it. I still take it as a win, and that's
Oh yeah.
to get to get as far as being nominated with that much competition. That's pretty sweet in a secular market at that. So
Right?
yeah,
Nomination and acknowledgement.
yeah,
I mean, that's huge in and of itself. So,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's
for
like
sure.
nominated for Academy Award is almost as good as getting one.
Right,
you know,
yeah.
So yeah, we take that as a win. We've got some coming up at the end of this month. There's a Christian Family Film Festival, I believe, and we've been selected as finalist for that. So they'll do judging
Awesome.
on that when it occurs, and then I think the next one after that is either in August or September, and it's the Christian Media Association one here in Dallas, actually. And I think we got a nomination. If I'm not mistaken, I think we got finalists or something for an Austin Film Festival that's coming up as well. So, yeah, it's cranking. Pretty much everywhere we've been so far. So,
That's fantastic. And I'm very interested, intrigued to find out as far as the Christian Film Festival
yeah.
and, the relation with giants and to see how they respond to that.
Yeah, well, so far with the interaction that I've had with people, in fact, Tim Shields is the founder of the Christian Media Association. He started it here in Dallas back in it was 2009 or 10, I believe, and they used to have Christian Media Association chapters here in Dallas. And at that time, I was the chairman of the scriptwriting committee, and a lot of really good things happening here. And then he moved, but he's back. He's back in the Dallas area again, and he decided to create a filmmakers church. And he's like, I don't want to compete with any of you guys who have a regular church that you're going to, whatever. So he does it on, I think it's once or twice a month on Monday nights, as a time of fellowshipping, networking, and encouragement in the scriptures. And the first one was a few weeks ago, and he preached from Numbers 13.
Right on.
And he was like, he angled it as a motivational speech about taking on our giants, but he
Yeah,
he
yeah.
was quite clear in stating that the Israelites had to face physical giants, like actual creatures. Then he pointed to me. He's like, and if you want to know anybody here that knows this deal, it's this man right here. So he gave me a nice call out at the
Right on.
meeting, which was cool. So yeah, I'm very hopeful moving forward, and we've got the Take on the World conference that's well, it's a month from now, actually. Well, it's at 22 of August, so a month away. And I'm doing 3 presentations there. The first one is going to be different, way out of the box for what most people are used to me doing, and it's more on the let's get ourselves healed of emotional trauma and distress and anger, fear, and sadness issues that are holding us back. Like, let's get healthy, And then the second one, which I literally just finished working on it today, is a complete redo of my "Why We Need to Be Culturally Relevant" lecture, which was the first one I ever gave on the public scene back in 2010, right after I left our full-time job. And but I mean, there's so much to talk about now, and over the last 11 plus years since I did that, it really needed an overhaul anyway. But like, I'm really showing how media is such a powerful tool, but right now it's being used as a weapon against us. And just showing how media manipulation has worked, and who's pulling the strings, who's in charge. 6 corporations own everything that you listen to, you see, or hear, pretty much. So I'm really going to take a deep dive in that. And then the third presentation will be on, I'm tentatively calling it the Revelation 12 Nuremberg connection, and it will deal with the 1561 UFO flap and the Copernican revolution, and how that set the stage for the coming Great Deception. So,
yeah, that's great, man. That's sounds very interesting, and yeah, you're gonna have a lot of work ahead of you, doing 3 fully new things. But
I don't know why I do that to myself.
Well, you've got a lot to say,
Well, that's the problem, though, man. Like, and lately, the conference people, have been very gracious to me in terms of allotment of time and stuff like that. I mean, even at the what was it, the Flattoberfest a couple of years ago now, I guess. They're like, yeah, however long you need. I'm like, okay. that one was a little over 3 hours long. They put me at the end of the night, so I'm gonna try to keep it in the 2-hour ballpark, but no promises.
Right.
Because there's so much. I mean, that's the hardest thing. And what I do when I create my presentations is I just do a brain dump, and then I'm like, okay, that's a 5-hour presentation. I got to hack this apart, just start hacking it away till I get it down to a reasonable duration.
One thing leads to another, for sure.
Oh man! And the second comic book is really coming along well.
Sweet.
Yeah, I did a whole bunch of CGI panel layouts for the sake of the storyboard for my artist a couple weeks ago. I was like, I'm going to just knock a whole bunch of mounts to get ahead on that, so they can crank away on it. Basically redrawing what I submit to them. But they're catching up real quick, man. Like, I was 4 pages ahead, and now I'm only 2 pages ahead. And I'm like, oh man, that could be. And then I got 6 more pages to do after that. And that'll be done. But it's coming along beautiful. It looks so good.
That's awesome. I saw also, as far as fundraising for the project, how Stan Lee, early in the days with the Marvel comics, they used to sell like sketch panels, and autograph them, of course, but make limited editions, or prints available, and that would be a good way to provide collectible pieces of the art and the project, and also to give something of material, something like people can hang on to, and also even frame and hang, that kind of thing. So something to consider as well.
Oh, for sure. Jig Grant came through town. What was it? It was 2 days ago, I think. He and his wife and baby, and we had a really, really cool chat. So we got to get together on our brainstorm session again on the crypto side.
I've got some other things to say too.
Yeah, we had a really, really, really good talk. Speaking of that, man, have you seen what's going on with the new pulse chain coming off of Hexagon?
No.
What's this guy? Richard Hart, I think is his name. The guy.
Oh yeah. The Hex. Yeah,
he's getting ready to fork it, and I think it's going to be called Pulse. But so whatever you have, it's automatically you're going to get the same amount in Pulse. But like it's shot through the roof just recently. I mean, I got in at 0.0087 something of a penny, and I think it went up to like 17 cents or something just recently.
Wow,
So it's really doing well. So
that's amazing.
kind of well, I mean, now's the time. It's like I'm like, oh, get a little bit more, get a little bit more, just kind of sock it away, and
Uh huh.
just sit on it.
Yeah,
But
that's great.
yeah, lots of
Uh,
interesting things going on. Meanwhile, the rest of the world's going completely insane.
yeah, right.
Man,
Yeah, that's the way it is.
I just saw something that was so ridiculous. Kamala Harris was quoting the Bible to try to get people to get the pokey poke, saying that to get the pokey poke is the Bible says love your neighbor, and there's no greater way to do that than to get the pokey poke. I'm like, are you
Oh my
kidding me?
gosh.
Like that's like so pathetic,
Right.
man.
So
Crazy.
crazy.
Oh, but I found, man, I wonder if I can dig it up and put it in the chat room. I don't want to get either of us flagged here, but there was actually, and if they can't give you a fact checker thing on it, because it's actually on the CDC website. It's you could go right to the CDC website and download it. Oh man, I can't find it right off the bat. Oh well. Maybe during the broadcast I'll look for it and see if I get it. But it's pretty huge. Like page 17 of the presentation, it's like a PowerPoint presentation. Lists all the expected side effects for it, and I mean it shows you in no
Oh
uncertain
my
terms that
gosh.
they knew exactly what they're doing,
Uh-huh.
and the side effects are pretty horrific. Many of which unfortunately a lot of people are suffering from. But it just shows that they knew it. They knew it going into it. So
Yeah, there's been an agenda for a very long time, and they are fulfilling and making it happen with regard to the whole depopulation, New World Order, Georgia Guidestones. I mean, yeah, they've been telling us for a very long time. And as far as media and propaganda, for anybody, especially young and listeners that don't know and have never seen 1984, we are for sure living in an Orwellian reality. And that movie, and he was an insider with all of that, uh, and ahead of his time, and showing what they were desiring, and rule with impunity, and how they control all thought, brainwash everybody into believing and thinking a certain way. And this is, especially over the last 4 years, this has come to the forefront as far as fake news and just propaganda, and how um, media and newscasts are created and disseminated, and then they parrot the same thing. You can go from local channel to local channel in different cities and states, and they say basically the same thing, just different anchors and different hosts. But all that is contrived, controlled, manipulated.
completely. Have you looked into the Vanguard BlackRock deal?
Uh-uh.
How like if you really want to, I've got it on the screen by the way. I found the presentation, put the link in the chat room as well, but it's on the screen right now. This is actually on the FDA.gov/media 143557 /download. That's right on their website. So you can't get flagged for this. This is on their website. This is what they're saying. And a working list of adverse events, outcomes subject to change. And this is all the stuff that they expected to happen. This came out in October of 2020, October 22nd, 2020.
Crazy.
But yeah, BlackRock and Vanguard being the ultimate puppet masters that own everything and control everything.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I'm going to be hitting on that pretty hard at the presentation. Also, for anybody that's interested, there's a really good series on media by a guy named Scott. I forget his last name now. Let me see if I can find that real quick. But he has a YouTube channel. Or his name is Scott Ritsema, Ritsema, and on his, you could just do a YouTube search for Digital Disconnect, and I think it's like 11 videos in the series. So lots of good stuff out there to look into to really get aware of what's happening and how they're doing it. And my whole thing is, man, this is David and Goliath on steroids. Of course, we know who won that fight, but still, I mean, it's pretty massive, insanely massive what we're up against. But
oh yeah,
man, we've got to do something.
Right.
And what I mean by that is we have, like, I hate making Jeff Bezos richer, for one thing.
Right.
You know, with my books on Amazon.
Yeah.
Show me an alternative, though. I mean, I know there's Lulu and there's a few others, and I'm probably going to start looking into some of those other ones because I can't stand giving these people. But this is how we are funding their machine through all the things that we purchased and subscribe to, and you know, we have monthly subscriptions or whatever. We are paying for our own enslavement, literally.
Right.
And it's like, okay, Christian, it's time for us to really take stock of, especially the way the economy is right now, as far as where we're spending our money. And like, if you're sick of media doing what it's doing, well, the only way around that is to start funding something else, an alternative. You know, we have to have our own publishing, distribution, and production companies. So we're not using the Sonys of the world, the Amazons of the world, you know, and not relying on the Netflix and Hulus and, you know, all that of the world. We need our own deal, and I applaud the people over at the Chosen, because they're really doing it right.
Yeah, I agree fully. And with any word on Lighthouse and how that project's going?
I texted. I just went blank. What's his name?
Sean.
Can't believe I totally blanked out. Like, I'm spaced out. Sean. Sorry, Sean, if you're listening. I texted him it was a couple of weeks ago, and they're getting ready to go into beta release soon. I guess they had, you know, quite a bit to overcome in terms of everything I'm talking about here. It's like, you know, we can't be on Amazon servers, you know, because the same thing that happened to Parler could happen to us. So
fully.
But I'm really hopeful that they could get. I mean, they had to do a lot of back end kind of start from scratch kind of stuff, which of course took a lot of time and I'm sure a lot of money.
Yeah, no doubt.
To do, but hopefully they'll be ready to release that soon, because we definitely need it.
Right. Yeah, fully. Oh, that's a big project. They took on a lot, so.
Yeah, and you know, I wish them the best. I hope that they can really pull it off, because if they do, man, I mean, that whole platform and everything, the way it's designed to do, and if it works right, is going to be really amazing.
Right. Yeah, it could definitely be a game changer, you know, especially for our community and those of us that have been and still are utilizing and putting out content, because with YouTube and Google and Facebook, there's censoring everything and you know, just wiping out people's entire life work just in, you know, one night. I mean,
it's pretty horrible.
Deleting everything. It is.
I hope
absolutely horrible.
Hope you've been backing up all your stuff. I need to back up some more recent stuff, live shows anyway. But
yeah, I need to do more of that too. But yeah, I have a lot of the older stuff copied, but I have to really ask my son about the newer stuff. He's the technology guru for our family. So
yeah, and those of you who are listening, you know, you might be able to help us out a little bit on this. There's a software, I think it's like $30 or something for the license, called All My Tube, YouTube downloader. It will download media from like Vimeo or, you know, pretty much anywhere. But but I'm pretty sure you can just like go on a YouTube channel and download the entire channel.
What?
Just
That's what I need.
I know you can do it with playlists. You like I did with the digital disconnect.
Awesome.
You
All
just
mine too.
yeah.
I'll write this down.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could go to like somebody's YouTube channel and then click on videos, and then paste that URL into all my tube, and I'm pretty sure it will grab the whole. I know it will do it with playlists. I think it'll do it with just the video link, but like this has really helped me out. Is anytime I find a cool playlist that I like, you just copy the URL to the playlist.
Awesome.
And
awesome.
50 videos or whatever just automatically will download, and it'll put it in a folder by the name of the playlist.
Cool.
So those of you out there who want to help us out, and for your own benefit, you might want to do it anyway, just to get it.
Download our stuff.
If something happens to ZenRI or any of your other favorite YouTube video guys out there or gals, we may miss a couple. It's like, oh crap, I forgot to download that one. And
there's a lot. Yeah.
We could put a SOS out. Hey, anybody got this episode? And then somebody else can say, hey, yeah, I downloaded it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can come together because it's getting
that's awesome.
Pretty insane out there now.
Yeah, and that would be a great way to upload to I think they just changed, but like the one that you do, the other library and other sites.
Yeah, library, BitChute, some of the others.
Yeah. Yeah, to have all that, to actually upload to all that, but yeah, okay. Well, when we come back from break, I know we're just a few minutes out. Do you remember where we were and what we were going into?
Yeah, I hope you got some water nearby because you're going to be doing a lot of reading.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
I pretty much read the whole show last time.
Yeah, I know. And I knew that this was coming. So.
Yeah, I read a lot from Joshua and got us caught up in Genesis. And then I read from the King James, I read Genesis 45, I believe.
Oh, right. You ended with that. Yeah.
So, but in the few minutes before we go to break, I can put something else up on the screen that you were going to address. We talked about briefly, and that is the issue of the 430 years.
Oh, and yeah. Let me go ahead and pull that up.
I've got it up on the screen right now, a chart that I made about 10 years ago or so. That in Galatians 3:17, Paul states that there was 430 years between the covenant of Abraham and the law given to Moses. And Abraham was 75 when he made the covenant with him. Moses was 80 when he received the law. And I showed that, so the 430, the extra 30 years is waiting for Isaac to be born. And so the 400 years starts with Isaac, and it ends with the giving of the law. But from the time of the giving of the covenant with Abraham to the giving of the law on Mount Sinai was 430 years. So, but every preacher I've ever heard says, "Oh, the Israelites were slaves in Egypt for 400 years." I'm like, no one's even in Egypt for 400 years.
Right.
It's 215 years from Abraham to Joseph being sold into slavery. And then, he has a number of years in prison and all that, and then he rises second in charge, and then the famine, and then the house of Jacob comes down. And then they're given Goshen, the best of the land, so everything's great until a Pharaoh arises that didn't remember Joseph, which seems kind of ridiculous if you think about it, if he was a native-born Pharaoh. But Isaiah 52 says, 52:3-5, "For thus saith the Lord, ye have sold yourself for naught, and ye shall be redeemed without money. For thus says the Lord, my people went down aforetime into Egypt to sojourn there, and the Assyrian oppressed them without cause." So that Pharaoh that showed up that didn't remember Joseph had to have been a foreigner, which is why he wasn't up to date on the history of the land that he was about to conquer and rule. Because if he was a native-born Pharaoh, that'd be like us forgetting, one of our presidents existed.
Right.
Within 100 years or so. So that really opened up my eyes to a lot of things, that they were actually only slaves. Best I can figure is on the low end 80 years and the high end 100. They may have gone just before Moses' birth or right about the time of Moses' birth, where they say the Hebrews are proliferating so much, like, well, kill the babies, right? And then Moses is put in the river. So they weren't slaves in Egypt. That's the bottom line for 400 years, and that probably should take us to the break. And anything you want to talk about after that?
Yeah, after the break, I'll share a couple things that I had sent to you that cover this and are confirming witnesses. So, out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses shall the truth be established. And I did find 2 in different books and different accounts. So,
cool.
Yeah, we'll cover that. All right. Well, very cool. Yeah, let me see. I think we are. We're already at break according to, but no music. All right, so we'll be right back, everyone. One minute.
Okay. Have you had anybody knocking on your door for the vaccine?
No. Oh, no. They're doing that? That's so crazy.
Yeah, they're talking about it in the chat room. I guess there's been some videos about door-to-door vaccine knocks. We've had it. Somebody's knocked on our door every day this week. I haven't answered it. I just,
That's insanity.
Let them go away. I don't know if that's who it is. There's a lot of people going around knocking on doors about solar, also getting solar electricity. So it might be that, but I'm like, I'm busy. I don't want to deal with it. I got too much going on. So just.
Well, I definitely think we should have implemented on a large scale solar, but.
Sheila and I have been looking into it, and there's a lot of scams out there, so you got to really be careful.
Yeah, you have to be careful. All right, we are back, everyone, and again, sorry that there's no music to give you an idea as to where we are with the breaks, but just in case, because they're not going to cover the interim, and even when we speak, that will be, left out of the broadcast. So we just want to make sure for the archives and for people that come later that everything will be in line. But with regard to the 430 years, I will share a couple of things here. Okay. And then I'll tell you where they're from after I read, because it's at the end. Why should I risk the safety of my person, seeing that I know not whether Israel possesses merits, making them worthy of redemption? I have reckoned up the years with care, and I have found that but 210 have elapsed since the covenant of the pieces made with Abraham. And at that time thou didst ordain 400 years of oppression for his seed. But God overturned all his objections. He spake to Moshe, saying, I will be with thee. Whatever thou desirest I will do, so that the redemption will in very truth be realized through me in accordance with my promise to Jacob. The little ones that Israel will carry up out of Egypt, I will provide with food for 30 days. This shall prove to thee in what manner I will supply the needs of all. And as I will be at thy side, thou hast no need to fear any man, respecting thy doubt, whether Israel deserves to be redeemed. This is my answer. They will be permitted to go forth from Egypt on account of the merits they will acquire at this mountain, whereon they will receive the Torah through thee. And thy reckoning of the end is not correct. For the 400 years of bondage began with the birth of Isaac, not with the going down of Jacob into Egypt. Therefore, the appointed end has come. And so, of course, we know that Moshe was tasked with leading them out of Egypt, and that he contended with Pharaoh in order to bring forth their liberty. And that they received the Torah. And we see that, in the same manner that Yahuwah, the Father, had released them from the bondage of Egypt through Moshe, and they received the law on Mount Sinai, that Christ, when he came in first advent, that the Holy Spirit came upon the apostles. And this is something interesting that I learned from a New Testament apocryphal book, is that when they spoke in tongues in the various languages, each one was actually speaking in the language that they would be later assigned in going to that land. And not only did they speak in tongues that particular night, but the Holy Spirit coming upon them, they, like Joseph, learned the language of the people that they were going forth to interact with. And so they kept that knowledge, and I thought that was pretty intriguing as well. But the second witness to what we said as far as the bondage beginning with the birth of Isaac, this comes from, that was from the Legends of the Jews. This is from the Perk de Rabbi Eleazar. Rabbi Eleazar, son of Azariah, said, is it not so that the Israelites did not dwell in Egypt except for 2,106 years? If I don't know if that's correct, but we'll just keep going. But in order to teach thee, know that this is so, come and see. For when Joseph went down to Egypt, he was 17 years old. And when he stood before Pharaoh, he was 30 years old, as it is said. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before, that must be a number. It's actually 210 years, and the 6 is a footnote. So, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and Joseph was 30 years old when he stood, and there's a number 7, so that's why I know that 6 is the footnote. Before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And the 7 years of plenty and the 2 years of famine, behold, they are 9 and 30 years in all. And Levi, the son of Jacob, was 6 years older than Joseph. And when he went down to Egypt, he was 45 years. And the years of his life in Egypt were 92 years. Behold, all of them amount to 137 years. As it is said, and the years of the life of Levi were 137 years. On his going down to Egypt, his wife bare unto him Jochebed, his daughter, as it is said, and the name of Amram's wife was Jochebed. And she was 130 years when she bare Moshe, as it is said. And Moshe was fourscore years old when he stood before Pharaoh. Behold, the total is 210 years in all. And thus it says, and they shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And so, just as you said, according to these scriptures, it that bondage begins with the birth of Isaac, and they were only literally in the land of Egypt for 210 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had seen something that it's, in the original you don't have vowel markings or punctuation, and that it really kind of depends on how you. It's been a long time since I looked at it, but something about where you put the punctuation or how you translate it, like that they will be sojourners and suffer persecution 400 years. So, in other words, like both activities will take place within the 400 years. Sojourning in a land that's not your own and being afflicted. And other than Shechem, which is the plot of land that they purchased, and the cave of Machpelah, a few chunks of land, they were in land that was the Canaanite land. It was not their own. And you might even say that Canaan was a district of Greater Egypt, under the rule of Egypt, let's say. That Egypt was the world superpower at the time, so all other nation states were subservient to Egypt. In that sense,
Right.
but
Yes.
they weren't physical, whips to the back slaves doing anything for 400 years. That's definitely
Right.
not
Yeah.
the case.
Yeah. Yeah, not at all. And actually, I do have one other confirming witness here. This is a short passage as well. It says, Rabbi Eleazar, the son of Arak, said to them, the Holy One, blessed be he, said this to Abraham only at the hour when he had seed. As it is said, thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. From the time when Isaac was born until Israel went forth from Egypt, 400 years elapsed. Rabbi Yochanan, son of Zakkai, said to him, verily it is written, now the sojourning of the children of Israel, which they sojourned in Egypt, was 430 years. He answered him, saying, 210 years Israel abode in Egypt, and 5 years before Jacob came to Egypt, there were born unto Joseph the fathers of the two tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, and they belonged to the Israelites. Behold, we have 215 years of days and nights. This equals 430 years. For the Holy One, blessed be he, reduced the time for the sake of the merit of the patriarchs, for they are the mountains of the world, and for the sake of the merit of the mothers, for they are the hills of the world. And concerning them the scriptures say, the voice of my beloved, behold, he cometh, leaping upon the mountains and slapping over the hills. And so, yeah, that's 3 witnesses to that.
There you go. So enough of that
Yeah.
preaching the Israelites were slaves in Egypt for 400 years. It's not true.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with the year 1619 either. Crying out loud.
All right. So
yeah, you got to read the Targum version of Genesis 45 and anything, I guess, maybe Legends of the Jews that might catch us up.
Okay, let me go share the Targum here. All right. And Yehuda came near to him and said, in imploring my Lord, let thy servant, I implore, speak a word in the hearing of my Lord, and let not thy anger grow strong against thy servant. For at the hour that we came to thee, thou didst say to us, I fear before the Lord, and now thy judgments are rendered like the judgments of a prince of Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servants, saying, have you a father or a brother? Jerusalem. And Yehuda came near him and said, in beseeching thee, my Lord, let thy servant now speak a word in the hearing of my Lord, and let not thy anger be strong against thy servant. For at the first time we came down to thee into Mizraim, didst thou not tell us, I fear before the Lord? And now thy judgments are returned like the judgments of Pharaoh, thy Lord, by whom thou adjurest. Yet I am honorable as thou art, and my father is honorable as Pharaoh thy Lord is, by whom thou dost adjure. Can I not swear by the life of the head of my father, and not lie? For if I draw my sword from within its sheath, I would not return it till I had filled all the land of Mizraim with the slain. To its sheath I would not return it, till I had made all Israel, Mizraim desolate of inhabitants, beginning with thyself, and ending with Pharaoh thy Lord, were it not against the will of my father. Or hath it not been heard by thee, or not told thee, what my two brothers, Shimeon and Levi, did, who went up against the town of Shechem, while they were dwelling in security, and killed every male by the edge of the sword, because they had corrupted Dinah, our sister, who hath not been numbered in the tribes, nor hath portion or inheritance with us in the dividing of the land? By how much more then shall it be done for Benjamin our brother, who is numbered with us among the tribes, and who hath portion and inheritance with us in the dividing of the land, and in force is more unyielding than theirs, because I have become the sponsor for the youth, and the hands of my father, saying, if I bring him not to thee, and set him before thee, I will be guilty with thee, and be removed from thy salutation all the days. Hast thou not heard, or hath it not been told thee, that in the land of Canaan we are kings and princes as thou art? When Joseph the beloved and honorable saw that the strength of Yehuda his brother had risen up, and that the thoughts of his heart came forth, and that they rent their garments, in that hour beckoned Joseph to Manasseh his firstborn, and stamped with his shoe, and all Joseph's palace trembled. In that hour Yehuda said, if it had not been on the side of the house of my father, it would not have been done so. Then began Yehuda to be milder in his words. And he said, my Lord asked his servant, saying, have you a father or a brother? And we told my Lord, we have an aged father and a son of his old age, a little one whose brother is dead, and he only remains of his mother, and his father on that account loveth him. And thou sayest to thy servants, bring him down to me, and I will set mine eyes on him for good. Jerusalem, mine eyes shall be gracious upon him. But we told my Lord, the youth cannot leave his father, for if he leave his father, he will die. Yet thou sayest to thy servants, if you bring not your youngest brother down, you shall not again see my face. And it was when we went up to thy servant, our father, we related to him my Lord's words, and our father said to us, return and buy us a little corn. But we told him, we cannot go down if our youngest brother be not with us when we go down, for we shall not be able to see the man's face, unless our youngest brother be with us. And thy servant our father said to us, you know that my wife bare me two sons. One went forth from me, and I said, surely he is dead, and I have not beheld him since. And you will now take this other from before me? And if death happen to him, you will bring down mine age with mourning to the house of the grave. Therefore thy servant became surety for the youth with my father, saying, if I restore him not to thee, let me be guilty before my father all the days. And now let thy servant remain, I beseech thee, as the slave of my Lord, instead of the young man, and let the young man go up with his brothers. For how can I go up to my father? And the young man be not with us, lest I behold the evil that will strike my father through. 45. And Joseph could not endure not to be able to weep on account of all who stood before him. And he said, let every man go out from me. And no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he lifted up his voice with weeping, and the Mizrahi heard, and a man of the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father yet alive? But his brothers could not answer him a word, for they were troubled before him. And Joseph said to his brothers, come near, I pray, and examine me. And they came near, and he said to them, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Mizraim. Now, therefore, be not grieved, nor consider it a hard thing that you sold me hither. For the Lord sent me hither before you to preserve you. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the midst of the land, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. But the Lord sent me before you to set you a remnant in the land, and to preserve you by a great deliverance. And now it was not you who sent me hither, but it was from before the Lord that the thing was occasioned, that he might set me for a prince unto Pharaoh, a chief over his house, and a ruler in all the land of Mizraim. Make haste and go up to my father and say to him, thus saith thy son Joseph, the Lord hath set me for a chief over all the Mizraim. Come down to me, delay not, and thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen. And be near me, thou and thy sons children, thy sheep, thy oxen, and all that thou hast, and I will sustain you there. For there are yet 5 years of famine, lest thou and the men of thy house and all that thou hast be wasted away. And behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that my mouth speaketh with you in the language of the house of holiness. And you must show my father all the honor I have in Mizraim, and all my greatness which you see, and hasten my father hither. And he bowed himself upon his brother Benjamin's neck, and wept, because it would be that the house of holiness should be builded in the portion of Benjamin, and be twice destroyed. And Benjamin wept upon Joseph's neck, because he saw that the tabernacle of Shiloh would be in the portion of Joseph and be destroyed. And he kissed all his brethren and wept over them, because he saw that the sons of his people would be brought into bondage. And afterwards his brethren discoursed with him. And a voice was heard in the royal house of Pharaoh, saying, the brothers of Joseph are come. And the thing was pleasing in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of his servants. And he said to Joseph, Tell thy brethren, do this: lade your beasts and go, carry into the land of Canaan, and take your father and the men of your house, and come to me, and I will give you the best of what is desirable in the land of Mizraim, and you shall eat the fat of the land. And thou, Joseph, shall appoint for the honor of thy father. Therefore, tell thy brethren, do this: take with you from the land of Mizraim wagons drawn by oxen, in which to carry your children and your wives, and bring your father, and come. And your eyes must not look wistfully on your utensils, for the best of what is desirable in all the land of Mizraim is yours. And the sons of Israel did so. And Joseph gave them wagons according to the word of Pharaoh, and he furnished them with provisions for the way. And to each of them he gave vestments and apparel. But to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver, and 5 vestments for apparel. And these presents he sent to his father: 10 asses laden with wine and the good things of Mizraim, and 10 she-asses laden with corn and bread and provisions for his father's journey. And he dismissed his brothers to go, and said to them, do not contend about my having been sold, lest you quarrel in passing along the way. And they went up from Mizraim, and came to the land of Canaan, unto Jacob their father. And they declared to him, saying, Joseph is yet alive, and is ruler over all the land of Mizraim. But his heart was divided, because he did not believe them. Jerusalem, and his heart was divided. And they told him all the words of Joseph which he had spoken to them. And when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to bring him, the spirit of prophecy which had gone up from him at the time that Joseph was sold, returning, rested upon Jacob their father. And Israel said, many benefits hath the Lord wrought for me. He delivered me from the land, from the hands, delivered me from the hand of Esau, and from the hand of Laban, and from the hands of the Canaanites who pursued me. And many consolations have I seen, and have expected to see. But this I had not expected, that Joseph my son should yet be alive. I will go now, and behold him before I die. Jerusalem. And Israel said, many benefits and consolations I had hoped to see, but this I had not expected, that, behold, Joseph, my son, should be yet alive. I will go and see him before I die. Do I continue in 46?
That's where that's the Targum. That's where we.
Yes.
No, we didn't. We didn't get that. Yeah, we ended
Okay,
it.
we stopped there. All right,
at
cool.
45. Yeah.
All right, then let's go to the Legends of the Jews. Let me share this.
As you do that, something that's being discussed in the chat room that I've frankly had the same question myself. How did they end up with like 600,000 Israelites from 70 people in 215 years? And
that's a good question.
I don't know if that's answered in any of the ancient texts that you're aware of. For me, I'm like, well, they would have multiple wives, for one thing, including handmaidens that may have not necessarily been Israelite born. And people, they were, as we see a few times, marrying as young as 12 years of age. So, I mean, literally as soon as a female was capable of giving birth, they pretty much got started doing so. back in
I
those
do
days.
believe also in the story of Jasher, and it's also found in other places that we saw that after Joseph became um, the superintendent of the land, that he had his own army. And remember the story that he went forth and he went to war with, I forget exactly who it was, but he liberated an entire people.
Hmm.
And that group of people
They
actually
got
joined him
they got
in
grafted in.
that liberation.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing, because the whole Black Hebrew Israelite crowd out there grossly mangled the 400-year prophecy into something that has nothing to do with Scripture.
Hmm.
You know, and I don't care what color you are, Israel's not about that.
Right,
Because there's
right,
white Hebrew Israelism as much as black.
right.
Everybody wants to claim the title of the chosen. But
Hmm.
we see a lot of mixed rabble going on,
Right.
continually, and people being grafted in to the family of Israel that are not blood related, on a fairly regular basis. I mean, just the Exodus itself. I mean, it tells you point blank that there's a whole lot of people. I mean, and when you consider, especially what was happening at the time of the famine, how much integration had to have taken place, because all of the nation states surrounding Egypt became aware that Egypt had food. When
Right.
when
Hold,
no
hold that thought, Rob,
going to break.
because we're in the break. Yeah.
Okay.
So just 2 minutes, everyone, and then we'll continue. We'll be right back. Get a sip of water. $50.
I got a scripture ready to go on that.
Okay, cool. $15. All right. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. We are speaking about the Exodus and also the bondage of Egypt and how all that began with Isaac, and how really the Israelites were only in the land of Egypt for 210 years. And let me turn this back over to you, Rob, so you can finish your thought.
Yeah, I was just saying that. Well, actually, let me pull up the scripture on that. Exodus 12, 37 through 40. The children of Israel sojourned from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men beside children, and a mixed multitude went up also with them. So the 600,000 includes the mixed multitude.
Yes.
With them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not tarry, neither had they prepared for themselves any victual. The verse that destroys the black Hebrew Israelite movement right here. For the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. This is reiterated in Galatians, where it says, "And this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed before God in Christ, the law which was 430 years after, cannot disannul that it should make the promise of none effect." And Paul sets up the guardrails here, saying that the 430 years is from the time of the giving of the covenant of Abraham to the giving of the covenant at Moses at Mount Sinai. 430 years. So you have two witnesses in Scripture that obliterates the 1619 nonsense. You know, they're like, oh, we're getting ready for, well, I mean, how many years do they pass their failed prophecy? It's like the new pre-trib rapture, all over again. You know, Dave Murphy and the like are out there, you know, around before 2019. You know, they're like, oh, get ready. You know, we're all going to be liberated, and America's going to suffer and burn for all the 1619 stuff. And all white men are evil, and black people are the only Israelites, and all that nonsense. No. The Scriptures tell you exactly when the 400 years took place. And as we talked about earlier, the 430 years is the difference between Abraham and the time that Abraham got the covenant and the covenant began. The 400-year starting clocks begins with the birth of Isaac.
Right.
So that's where your difference is. The promise was given 30 years prior to Isaac being born, because the promise was to the offspring of Abraham, and Isaac's the first of his offspring when you discount Ishmael. You know, the children of the promise,
the seed of promise,
the seed of promise. So I mean, Scripture destroys that entire ideology in a number of ways. First of all, by telling you exactly when the 400 years happened, and had nothing to do with the year 1619. Everybody in the Bible was aware of it being fulfilled at the time of the Exodus. The biblical authors understood that. But also, if you want to get into the color argument, you got a mixed multitude right here. Mixed. It's not about melanin. It's not about color. You know, so whether you believe they're all white or whether you believe they're all black, this verse destroys it. Right here. I'm so sick of it. I mean, they're all over the place, these people. Yeah, and you know, for a long time, to be fair, for a long time it was the white crowd, you know, saying that, you know, white people, that the United Kingdom and the United States is Ephraim and Manasseh, and you know, it's all white people. And now everybody's saying it's all black people. It's a mixed multitude, people. Stop it. Stop it. You know, and if this doesn't obliterate the argument, Romans chapter 7 through 11 does. You know, and Ephesians, if you're a New Testament person, Romans, Ephesians, and Galatians destroys the entire doctrine. You know, right off the bat.
What is 1619 for those of us that don't know?
1619 was the year that the slave trade began, to the exporting of black people from Africa to the United States to begin the slave trade here, which incidentally was black people selling black people to white people. So, you know, this is like Dante Fortson and that whole crowd. They're all over all this stuff, and it's like, because for the longest time they're all about Ham was black. You know, Ham was the black man, and because of me saying that Ham's wife had Nephilim seed, they're saying, you're cursing all black people. I'm like, no, I have never said that, never believed that, don't teach that. That's not, but they were like, well, Ham's black, you're saying his wife was Nephilim, so you're saying to all black people. I'm like, no, you're putting those words in my mouth. I never said that. I don't believe that. But I mean, and I'm like, furthermore, all the giants that we are aware of were white.
Yeah, right.
Pale skin, red hair. At that.
Red hair, yeah.
You know, so like everything they're accusing me of, they got to be Democrats, because like, it's all nonsense. You know. I'm like, look, if Adam was black, everybody's black. Okay, well, I mean, fine, whatever. I don't really care. The arguments that they use are not biblically supported, and that's what I'm trying to show everybody right here. Is you've got a mixed, even if you think Ham was black, and because you know there's one train of thought that Shem, Ham, and Japheth were all three different races, coming from the same father. You know, that white people come from Japheth and Asian people come from Shem and black people come from Ham. I'm like, okay, that's absurd, but okay, let's go with that completely ridiculous ideology. By the time you get to the Tower of Babel, again, it's about 600,000 people that are gathered together in the plains of Shinar, all mixing together.
Right.
And then you take the 600,000 all mixed together, and God mixes them up again into 70 different people groups. In 70 different languages. So, you know, if that's just men, I don't know if it's men and women and everything, but let's say even if it's just the entire population of the earth, 600,000 are all mixed together. If you think that Shem, Ham, and Japheth are three races, which I think is ridiculous, there's only one race, the human race.
Right,
and people just have different levels of melanin in their skin.
Yes.
The whole argument's absurd. It drives me crazy, dude. But Tower of Babel obliterates that. And this story right here obliterates that mixed multitude. And then when you get to the New Testament, you have the doctrine of Christ obliterating that. Love everybody. We're all one family. It's all, you know, one body of Christ. You know, the hand shouldn't say to the foot, you know, hey, I'm darker than you. You know, or I have no need of you. It's the whole thing is ridiculous. And these are just some of the scriptures that prove how stupid that whole thing is.
Yeah, and you know, as far as the color, there's many eyewitness accounts that speak of Yahushua as all blue eyes and golden hair, and
then
that's
that.
just from Pontius Pilate.
And then there's that, right?
Right.
Well, and how many times we see that in the Targums and the Legends of the Jews that Sarah.
Right, in the writings of Abraham, yeah.
Yeah, fair skin.
Yeah, fair skin, rosy cheeks.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, but I think we've probably
kind of beat that
riled up. Yeah, you can get some hate mail from all that, but all right, let us continue and let's see what's going into the legends of the Jews now.
Okay.
All right. Now Joseph reaped the harvest of his virtues, and according to the measure of his merits, God granted him reward. The mouth that refused the kiss of unlawful passion, and sin received the kiss of homage from the people. The neck that did not bow itself unto sin was adorned with the gold chain that Pharaoh put upon it. The hands that did not touch sin wore the signet ring that Pharaoh took from his own hand and put upon Joseph's. The body that did not come in contact with sin was arrayed in vestures of byssus. The feet that made no steps in the direction of sin reposed in the royal chariot, and the thoughts that kept themselves undefiled by sin were proclaimed as wisdom. Joseph was installed in his high position, invested with the insignia of his office. With solemn ceremony, the king took off his signet ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in princely apparel, and set a gold crown upon his head, and laid a gold chain about his neck. Then he commanded his servants to make Joseph to ride in a second chariot, which went by the side of the chariot wherein sat the king. And he also made him to ride upon a great and strong horse of the king's horses. And the servants conducted him through the streets of the city of Egypt. Musicians, no less than 1,000 striking cymbals, and 1,000 blowing flutes, and 5,000 men with drawn swords, gleaming in the air, formed the vanguard. 20,000 of the king's grandees, girt with gold embroidered leather belts, marched at the right of Joseph, and as many at the left of him. The women and the maidens of the nobility looked out of the windows to gaze upon Joseph's beauty, and they poured down chains upon him, and rings and jewels, that he might but direct his eyes toward them. Yet he did not look up, and as a reward God made him proof against the evil eye, nor has it ever had the power of inflicting harm upon any of his descendants. Servants of the king preceding him and following him burnt incense upon his path, and cassia, and all manner of sweet spices, and strewed myrrh and aloes wherever he went. 20 heralds walked before him, and they proclaimed, "This is the man whom the king hath chosen to be the second after him. All the affairs of the state will be administered by him, and whoever resisteth his commands or refuseth to bow down to the ground before him, he will die the death of the rebel against the king and the king's deputy." Without delay, the people prostrated themselves, and they cried, "Long live the king, and long live the deputy of the king!" And Joseph, looking down from his horse upon the people and their exultation, exclaimed, his eyes directed heavenward, "The Lord raiseth up the poor out of the dust, and lifted up the needy from the dunghill. O Lord of hosts, blessed is the man that trusteth in thee." After Joseph, accompanied by Pharaoh's officers and princes, had journeyed through the whole city of Egypt and viewed all there was therein, he returned to the king on the selfsame day. And the king gave him fields and vineyards and a present, and also 3,000 talents of silver, and 1,000 talents of gold, and onyx stones and bdellium, and many other costly things. The king commanded, moreover, that every Egyptian give Joseph a gift, else he would be put to death. A platform was erected in the open street, and there all deposited their presents. And among the things were many of gold and silver, as well as precious stones, carried thither by the people, and also the grandees, for they saw that Joseph enjoyed the favor of the king. Furthermore, Joseph received 100 slaves from Pharaoh, and they were to do all his bidding. And he himself acquired many more, for he resided in a spacious palace. 3 years it took to build it. Special magnificence was lavished upon the hall of state, which was his audience chamber, and upon the throne fashioned of gold and silver and inlaid with precious stones, whereon there was a representation of the whole land of Egypt and of the river Nile. And as Joseph multiplied in riches, so he increased also in wisdom. For God added to his wisdom, that all might love and honor him. Pharaoh called him Zaphanath Paneah, he who can reveal secret things with ease, and rejoiced the heart of man therewith. Each letter of the name Zaphanath Paneah has a meaning too. The first, Zadi, stands for Zophah, seer; Pe for Pode, redeemer; Nun for Nabi, prophet; Ta for Tomek, supporter; Pe for Poder, interpreter of dreams; Ain for Arum, clever; Nun for Nabon, discreet; and Het for Hakam, wise. The name of Joseph's wife pointed to her history in the same way. Asenath was the daughter of Dinah and Hamor, but she was abandoned at the borders of Egypt, only that people might know who she was. Jacob engraved the story of her parentage and her birth upon the gold plate fastened around her neck. The day on which Asenath was exposed, Potiphar went walking with his servants near the city wall, and they heard the voice of a child. At the captain's bidding, they brought the baby to him, and when he read her history from the gold plate, he determined to adopt her. He took her home with him and raised her as his daughter. The Aleph in Asenath stands for On, where Potiphar was priest; the Samek for Satira, hidden, for she was kept concealed on account of her extraordinary beauty. the noon for Nohamet, for she wept and entreated that she might be delivered from the house of the heathen Potiphar, and the Ta for Tamah, the perfect one, on account of her pious, perfect deeds. Asenath had saved Joseph's life while she was still an infant in arms, when Joseph was accused of immoral conduct by Potiphar's wife and the other women, and his master was on the point of having him hanged. Asenath approached her foster father, and she assured him, under oath, that the charge against Joseph was false. Then spake God, as thou livest, because thou didst try to defend Joseph, thou shalt be the woman to bear the tribes that he is appointed to beget. Asenath bore him 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, during the 7 years of plenty. For in the time of famine, Joseph refrained from all indulgence in the pleasures of life. They were bred in chastity and fear of God by their father, and they were wise and well instructed in all knowledge and in the affairs of state, so that they became the favorites of the court and were educated with the royal princes. Before the famine broke over the land, Joseph found an opportunity of rendering the king a great service. He equipped an army of 4,600 men, providing all the soldiers with shields and spears and bucklers and helmets and slings. With this army, and aided by the servants and officers of the king, and by the people of Egypt, he carried on a war with Tarshish in the 1st year after his appointment as viceroy. The people of Tarshish had invaded the territory of the Ishmaelites, and the latter, few in number at that time, were sore pressed, and applied to the king of Egypt for help against their enemies. At the head of his host of heroes, Joseph marched to the land of Havilah, where he was joined by the Ishmaelites, and with united forces they fought against the people of Tarshish, routed them utterly, settled their land with the Ishmaelites, while the defeated men took refuge with their brethren in Javan. Joseph and his army returned to Egypt, and not a man had they lost. In a little while, Joseph's prophecy was confirmed that year, and the 6 following years were years of plenty. And as he had foretold, the harvest was so ample that a single ear produced 2 heaps of grain. And Joseph made circumspect arrangements to provide abundantly for the years of famine. He gathered up all the grain, and in the cities situated in the middle of each district, he laid up the produce from round about, and had ashes and earth strewn on the garnered food from the very soil on which it had been grown. Also he preserved the grain in the ear, all these being precautions taken to guard against rot and mildew. The inhabitants of Egypt also tried, on their own account, to put aside a portion of the superabundant harvest of the 7 fruitful years against the need of the future. But when the grievous time of dearth came, and they went to their storehouses to bring forth the treasured grain, behold, it had rotted and become unfit for food. The famine broke in upon the people with such suddenness that the bread gave out unexpectedly as they sat at their tables. They had not even a bite of bran bread. Thus they were driven to apply to Joseph and beseech his help, and he admonished them, saying, Give up your allegiance to your deceitful idols, and say, Blessed is he who giveth bread unto all flesh. But they refused to deny their lying gods, and they betook themselves to Pharaoh, only to be told by him, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you, do. For this Pharaoh was rewarded. God granted him long life and a long reign, until he became arrogant, and well-merited punishment overtook him. When the Egyptians approached Joseph with a petition for bread, he spoke, saying, I give no food to the uncircumcised. Go hence and circumcise yourselves, and then return hither. They entered the presence of Pharaoh and complained to him regarding Joseph, but he said as before, Go unto Joseph. And they replied, We come from Joseph, and he hath spoken roughly unto us, saying, Go hence and circumcise yourselves. We warned thee in the beginning that he is a Hebrew, and would treat us in such wise. Pharaoh said to them, O ye fools, did he not prophesy through the Holy Spirit and proclaim to the whole world that there would come 7 years of plenty, to be followed by 7 years of dearth? Why did you not save the yield 1 or 2 years against the day of your need? Weeping, they made reply, The grain that we put aside during the good years hath rotted. Pharaoh, have ye nothing over the flour of yesterday? The Egyptians, the very bread in the basket rotted. Pharaoh, why? The Egyptians, because Joseph willed thus. Pharaoh, O ye fools, if his word hath power over the grain, making it to rot when he desireth to rot, then also must we die, if so be his wish concerning us. Go therefore unto him, and do as he bids you.
You know, this goes back to something we were talking about in the previous, I think it was the last broadcast, about Pharaoh being young.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah.
You know, some of his responses. I mean, he was wise.
Right,
You know,
yes.
he was a wise person, but he now whenever I see any of his interaction, I see him as a young boy saying it, basically.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And especially since they said of Joseph that he was a father unto Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
All right.
which is pretty wild, because Joseph was what, 17?
Yeah, he was still young.
He was a teenager when he arrived.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I think it said he was like 30 or something.
Well, yeah, when he was made in charge.
Yeah.
Because he was in prison for what, 15 years, 7 years, 20 years, something, whatever it was.
Yeah, a long time. Yeah, that, and then to Potiphar, so all that. Yeah. All right. The famine which inflicted hardships first upon the wealthy among the Egyptians gradually extended its ravages as far as Phoenicia, Arabia, and Palestine. Though the sons of Jacob, being young men, frequented the streets and the highways, yet they were ignorant of what their old home-keeping father Jacob knew, that corn could be procured in Egypt. Jacob even suspected that Joseph was in Egypt. His prophetic spirit, which forsook him during the time of his grief for his son, yet manifested itself now and again in dim visions, and he was resolved to send his sons down into Egypt. There was another reason. Though he was not yet in want, he nevertheless had them go thither for food, because he was averse from arousing the envy of the sons of Esau, and Ishmael by his comfortable state. For the sons of Esau and Ishmael, for the same reason, to avoid friction with the surrounding peoples, he bade his sons not appear in public with bread in their hands, or in the accoutrements of war, and as he knew that they were likely to attract attention on account of their heroic stature and handsome appearance, he cautioned them against going to the city altogether through the same gate, or indeed showing themselves altogether anywhere in public, that the evil eye be cast upon them. The famine in Canaan inspired Joseph with the hope of seeing his brethren. To make sure of their coming, he issued a decree concerning the purchase of corn in Egypt as follows: by order of the king and his deputy and the princes of the realm, be it enacted that he who desireth to buy grain in Egypt may not send his slave hither to do his bidding, but he must charge his own sons therewith. An Egyptian or a Canaanite that had bought grain and then selleth it again shall be put to death, for none may buy more than he requireth for the needs of his household. Also, who cometh with 2 or 3 beasts of burden, and loads them up with grain, shall be put to death at the gates of the city of Egypt. Joseph stationed guards, whose office was to inquire and take down the name of all that should come to buy corn, and also the name of their father and their grandfather, and every evening the list of names that thus made was handed to Joseph. These precautions were bound to bring Joseph's brethren down to Egypt, and also acquaint him with their coming as soon as they entered the land. On their journey, his brethren thought more of Joseph than of their errand. They said to one another, we know that Joseph was carried down into Egypt, and we will make search for him there. And if we should find him, we will ransom him from his master. And if his master should refuse to sell him, we will use force, though we perish ourselves. At the gates of the city of Egypt, the brethren of Joseph were asked what their names were, and the names of their father and grandfather. The guard on duty happened to be Manasseh, the son of Joseph.
I think we're
The
going to
brother.
break.
Oh, you're right. All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for our final segment. All right, welcome back, everybody, for our final segment. As per usual, the show is flying by, and we are covering a lot of really cool and cryptic issues, and so always a very interesting show when we get together. Any comment before we move on?
No, this is following pretty close to the Joshua narrative, it looks like. Well,
yeah.
I mean, we've seen that. I mean, the Legends of the Jews really does follow very much in parallel with Joshua.
A lot, yeah. There are often, a few details that do come forth, but yeah, they are definitely parallel, confirming witness for one another.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
All right, continuing. At the gates of the city of Egypt, the brethren of Joseph were asked what their names were, and the names of their father and grandfather. The guard on duty happened to be Manasseh, the son of Joseph. The brethren submitted to being questioned, saying, "Let us go into the town, and we shall see whether this taking down of our names be a matter of taxes. If it be so, we shall not demur. But if it be something else, we shall see tomorrow what can be done in the case." On the evening of the day they entered Egypt, Joseph discovered their names in the list which he was in the habit of examining daily. And he commanded that all stations for the sale of corn be closed except one only. Furthermore, even at this station, no sales were to be negotiated unless the name of the would-be purchaser was first obtained. His brethren, with whose names Joseph furnished the overseer of the place, were to be seized and brought to him as soon as they put in appearance. But the first thought of the brethren was for Joseph, and their first concern to seek him. For 3 days they made search for him everywhere, even in the most disreputable quarters of the city. Meantime, Joseph was in communication with the overseer of the station kept open for the sale of corn, and hearing that his brethren had not appeared there, he dispatched some of his servants to look for them. But they found them neither in Mizraim, the city of Egypt, nor in Goshen, nor in Ramses. Thereupon he sent 16 servants forth to make a house-to-house search for them in the city. And they discovered the brethren of Joseph in a place of ill fame, and haled them before their master. A large crown of gold on his head, apparelled in byssus and purple, and surrounded by his valiant men. Joseph was seated upon his throne in his palace. His brethren fell down before him in great admiration of his beauty, his stately appearance, and his majesty. They did not know him, for when Joseph was sold into slavery, he was a beardless youth. But when he knew his brethren, their appearance had not changed in aught, for they were bearded men when he was separated from them. He was inclined to make himself known to them as their brother, but an angel appeared unto him, the same that had brought him forth from Shechem to his brethren at Dothan, and spoke, saying, "These came hither with intent to kill thee." Later, when the brethren returned home and gave an account of their adventures to Jacob, they told him that a man had accused them falsely before the ruler of Egypt, not knowing that he who incited Joseph against them was an angel. It was in reference to this matter, and meaning their accuser, that Jacob, when he dispatched his sons on the second expedition to Egypt, prayed to God, "God Almighty, give you mercy before the man." Joseph made himself strange unto his brethren, and he took his cup in his hand, knocked against it, and said, "By this magic cup I know that ye are spies." They replied, "Thy servants came forth from Canaan into Egypt for to buy corn." Joseph, if it be true that ye came hither to buy corn, why is it that each one of you entered the city by a separate gate? The brethren, we are all the sons of one man in the land of Canaan, and he bade us not enter a city together by the same gate, that we attract not the attention of the people of the place. Unconsciously, they had spoken as seers, for the word all included Joseph as one of their number. Joseph, verily, ye are spies, all the people that come to buy corn return home without delay. But ye have lingered here 3 days without making any purchases, and all the time you have been gadding about in the disreputable parts of the city, and only spies are wont to do thus. The brethren, we, thy servants, are 12 brethren, the sons of Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of the Hebrew Abraham. The youngest is this day with our father in Canaan, and one hath disappeared. Him did we look for in this land, and we looked for him even in the disreputable houses. Joseph, have ye made search in every other place on earth? And was Egypt the only land left? And if it be true that he is in Egypt, what should a brother of yours be doing in a house of ill fame? If indeed ye are the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The brethren, we did hear that some Ishmaelites stole our brother and sold him into slavery in Egypt. And as our brother was exceedingly fair in form and face, we thought he might have been sold for illicit uses. And therefore we searched even the disreputable houses to
So
find him.
that's a different take on it. That when I was reading it in Joshua, it sounded more like, well, he was a stud, so maybe he would be hanging out in the brothels or whatever. But that seems to indicate that because he was good looking and well favored, that they may have sold him into prostitution himself.
Right,
Like
right.
that he was
Yeah,
like a sex slave.
right.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, because the fame and the beauty of Joseph is renowned in all these texts.
Yeah, he might have been sold for illicit uses. That he was actually going to be used for that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I remember in one of the texts it even said that Potiphar
Yeah,
looked at him strangely.
yeah, we read that.
Yeah,
I forgot what text that was, but I do remember that. We're like,
yeah,
what? And that we're
yeah.
like,
That
well,
was kind of strange.
that he was a little off, and then maybe that was why his wife was so needy.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So crazy. All right, continuing. Joseph, you speak deceitful words when you call yourselves sons of Abraham. By the life of Pharaoh ye are spies, and ye did go from one disreputable house to another, that none might discover you. The expression, by the life of Pharaoh, might have betrayed Joseph's real feeling to his brethren, had they but known his habit of taking this oath only when he meant to avoid keeping his word later. Joseph continued to speak to his brethren. Let us suppose you should discover your brother serving as a slave, and his master should demand a high sum for his ransom. Would you pay it? The brethren, yes. Joseph, but suppose his master should refuse to surrender him for any price in the world. What would you do? The brethren, if he yields not our brother to us, we will kill the master and carry off our brother. Joseph, now see how true my words were, that ye are spies. By your own admission you have come to slay the inhabitants of the land. Report hath told us that two of you did massacre the people of Shechem on account of the wrong done to your sister. And now have you come down into Egypt to kill the Egyptians for the sake of your brother? I shall be convinced of your innocence only if you consent to send one of your number home and fetch your youngest brother hither. His brethren refused compliance, and Joseph caused them to be put into prison by 70 of his valiant men, and there they remained for 3 days. God never allows the pious to languish in distress longer than 3 days, and so it was a divine dispensation that the brethren of Joseph were released on the third day.
That's
And
interesting. That almost sounds messianic.
yeah, fully. I was thinking that same thing,
Hmm.
even with Jonah.
Yeah.
hmm And were permitted by Joseph to return home on a condition, however, that one of them remained behind as hostage. The difference between Joseph and his brethren can be seen here. Though he retained one of them to be bound in the prison house, he still said, I feared God and dismissed the others. But when he was in their power, they gave no thought to God at this time. To be sure, their conduct was such as becoming to the pious, who accept their fate with calm resignation and acknowledge the righteousness of God, for he metes out reward and punishment, measure for measure. They recognized that their present punishment was in return for the heartless treatment they had dealt out to Joseph, paying no heed to his distress, though he fell at the feet of each of them, weeping and entreating them not to sell him into slavery. Reuben reminded the others that they had two wrongs to expiate: the wrong against their brother and the wrong against their father, who was so grieved that he exclaimed, I will go down to the grave to my son mourning. The brethren of Joseph knew not that the viceroy of Egypt understood Hebrew and could follow their words, for Manasseh stood and was an interpreter between them and him. Joseph decided to keep Simon as hostage in Egypt, for he had been one of the two. Levi was the other, to advise that Joseph be put to death, and only the intercession of Reuben and Judah had saved him. He did not detain Levi, too, for he feared if both remained behind together, Egypt might suffer the same fate at their hands as the city of Shechem.
Yeah, he's
Also,
like, because those two, they were pretty zealous. So
yeah, and they hype each other up.
yeah, like I don't want to put these two together. That's a pretty potent combination.
Yeah, bad combination, right?
You know, and that zeal, you know, appeared to be a genetic trait, because and we see it in Pinchas, which was a Torah study we just did a week or two ago. You know, his zeal. You know, and that's also cited by the Judas Maccabee.
Right.
When he starts talking about these people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, you know, Sheila calls it Operation Leverage, where you will take something and, you know, leverage it. You know,
right.
So while that was a bit of a problem for Jacob, you know, their zeal and what they did, Yahuwah's like, you know what? I can leverage that zeal and make them my priests, which they were the warriors.
Right.
The priests were.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Continue. Also, he preferred Simon to Levi because Simon was not a favorite among the sons of Jacob, and they would not resist his detention in Egypt too violently. While they might annihilate Egypt as aforetime, Shechem, if they were deprived of Levi, their wise men and high priest. Besides, it was Simon that had lowered Joseph into the pit, wherefore he had a particular grudge against him.
Nice.
Payback. When the brethren yielded to Joseph's demand and consented to leave their brother behind as hostage, Simon said to them, Ye desired to do with me as you did with Joseph. But they replied in despair, What can we do? Our households will perish of hunger. Simon made answer, Do as you will. But as for me, let me see the man that will venture to cast me into prison. Joseph sent word to Pharaoh to let him have 70 of his valiant men to aid him in arresting robbers. But when the 70 appeared upon the scene and were about to lay hands on Simon, he uttered a loud cry, and his assailants fell to the floor and knocked out their teeth. Pharaoh's valiant men, as well as all the people that stood about Joseph, fled affrighted. Only Joseph and his son Manasseh remained calm and unmoved. Manasseh rose up, dealt Simon a blow on the back of his neck, and put manacles upon his hands and fetters upon his feet,
It's
and
the whole
cast him into prison.
thing. I mean, it's almost like a scene from the Avengers or something. Like, you know, where Hulk is like, "Rah!" You know,
Right.
and Manasseh just, you know, he's a young guy. Like, he just jumps up there and bonks him on the back of the head, like, "Shut up, bonk."
Yeah, especially when all the other ran affrighted.
Yeah, and Simon's like, "Dude, that was not dealt by an Egyptian, but by one blank." So he like,
Yeah, exactly.
he's like, "Whoa, okay, only one of my siblings could hit me like that."
Right. After shaking off the stars.
Nice.
Joseph's brethren were greatly amazed at the heroic strength of the youth, and Simon said, "This blow was not dealt by an Egyptian, but by one belonging to our house." He was bound and taken to prison before the eyes of the other brethren of Joseph. But as soon as they were out of sight, Joseph ordered good fare to be set before him, and he treated him with great kindness. Joseph permitted his 9 other brethren to depart, carrying corn with them in abundance, but he impressed upon them that they must surely return and bring their youngest brother with them. On the way, Levi, who felt lonely without his constant companion Simon, opened his sack, and he espied the money he had paid for the corn. They all trembled, and their hearts failed them, and they said, "Where then is the loving kindness of God toward our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, seeing that he hath delivered us into the hands of the Egyptian king, that he may raise false accusations against us?" And Judah said, "Verily, we are guilty concerning our brother. We have sinned against God in that we sold our brother, our own flesh. And why do ye ask? Where then is the loving kindness of God toward our fathers?" Reuben spoke in the same way. "Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child, and ye would not hear? And now the Lord doth demand him of us. How can you say, Where then is the loving kindness of God toward our fathers, though you have sinned against him?" They proceeded on their journey home, and their father met them on the way. Jacob was astonished not to see Simon with them, and in reply to his questions, they told him all that had befallen them in Egypt. Then Jacob cried out, "What have ye done? I sent Joseph to you to see whether it be well with you, and ye said, An evil beast hath devoured him. Simon went forth with you to buy corn, and you say, The king of Egypt hath cast him into prison. And now we will take Benjamin away and kill him too. Ye will bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave." The words of Jacob which he uttered, "Me have ye bereaved of my children," were meant to intimate to his sons that he suspected them of the death of Joseph and of Simon's disappearance as well, and their reports concerning both he regarded as inventions. What made him inconsolable was that now, having lost 2 of his sons, he could not hope to see the divine promise fulfilled, that he should be the ancestor of 12 tribes. He was quite resolved in his mind, therefore, not to let Benjamin go away with his brethren under any condition whatsoever, and be with and he vouchsafed Reuben no reply when he said, "Slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee." He considered it beneath his dignity to give an answer to such balderdash. "My firstborn son," he said to himself, "is a fool. What will it profit me if I slay his 2 sons? Does he not know that his sons are equally mine?" Judah advised his brethren to desist from urging their father then. He would consent. He thought to whatever expedients were found necessary, as soon as their bread gave out, and a second journey to Egypt became imperative.
That's a ridiculous.
Right, slay my two sons.
I mean, look, you just became grandpa, right? Like
Right,
that's like crazy talk,
exactly.
to say, okay, yeah, kill your grandchildren if I fail. Like,
Yeah, how even
how
dare to suggest
how does that even make
that?
sense? Like,
Right.
that shows you Simeon's kind of jacked up, man. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, even this text, like Jacob's like, my son's a fool.
Right.
That's just
Right.
completely ridiculous. Where Judah's like, look, I'll, his vow is a lot better.
Yes,
That's an absurd vow to make.
it is. Why even say such? I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. All right, continuing. When the supplies bought in Egypt were eaten up and the family of Jacob began to suffer with hunger, the little children came to him and they said, "Give us bread that we die not of hunger before thee." The words of the little ones brought scorching tears to the eyes of Jacob, and he summoned his sons and bade them go again down into Egypt and buy food. But Judah spake unto him, "The man did solemnly protest unto us, saying that we should not see his face, except our brother Benjamin be with us, and we cannot appear before him with idle pretexts." And Jacob said, "Wherefore dealt ye so ill with me, as to tell the man whether ye had yet a brother?" It was the first and only time Jacob indulged in empty talk. And God said, "I made it my business to raise his son to the position of ruler of Egypt." And he complains and says, "Wherefore dealt ye so ill with me?" And Judah protested against the reproach that he had initiated the Egyptian viceroy in their family relations with the words, "Why, he knew the very wood of which our baby coaches are made. Father," he continued, "if Benjamin goes with us, he may indeed be taken from us, but also he may not. This is a doubtful matter, but it is certain that if he does not go with us, we shall all die of hunger. It is better not to concern thyself about what is doubtful, and guide thy actions by what is certain. The king of Egypt is strong and mighty king, and if we go to him without our brother, we shall be put to death. Dost thou not know, and hast thou not heard, that this king is very powerful and wise, and there is none like unto him in all the earth? We have seen all the kings of the earth, but none like unto the king of Egypt. One would surely say that among all the kings of the earth there is none greater than Abimelech, king of the Philistines, yet the king of Egypt is greater and mightier than he. And Abimelech can hardly be compared with one of his officers. Father, thou hast not seen his palace and his throne, and all his servants standing before him. Thou hast not seen that king upon his throne in all his magnificence, and with his royal insignia, arrayed in his royal robes, with a large golden crown upon his head. Thou hast not seen the honor and the glory that God hath given unto him, for there is none like unto him in all the earth. Father, thou hast not seen the wisdom, the understanding, and the knowledge that God hath given in his heart. We heard his sweet voice when he spake unto us. We know not, Father, who acquainted him with our names and all that befell us. We asked also concerning thee, saying, "Is your father still alive? And is it well with him? Thou hast not seen the affairs of the government of Egypt regulated by him, for none asketh his lord Pharaoh about them. Thou hast not seen the awe and the fear that he imposes upon all the Egyptians. Even we went out from his presence, threatening to do unto Egypt as unto the cities of the Amorites, and exceedingly wroth by reason of all his words that he spake concerning us as spies. Yet when we came again before him, his terror fell upon us all, and none of us was able to speak a word to him, great or small. Now, therefore, Father, send the lad with us, and we will arise and go down into Egypt and buy food to eat, that we die not of hunger." I think we are almost
Yeah, it looks like
out
we're
of
probably
time.
that's probably a good place to stop.
Yeah, 13 seconds. Yep. All right, man. Another great show, and thank everybody for listening. We'll pick it up on yours next week.
All right, sounds good, man.
All right. Be blessed all.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody. Good night,
Shalom.
everybody.